I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Never ever take feminism for granted. Now, I know that not a lot of people do take feminism for granted, but even just like the smallest percentage of people taking feminism for granted is way, way too much for me. I know things have changed. I know we're living in a modern era, and the feminism represented right now in media is seen as silly, is seen as unimportant, which leads to the whole undermining of feminism. But I want you to listen. If you are closed ears to feminism, if you scoff and roll your eyes every time that word is mentioned, every time someone claims to be a feminist, please open your ears for just this episode. And I will explain to you why feminism is so important. And I want to make it clear. I am not here to fearmonger. It's clear and it's evident that there is no active or blatant legislation or action being taken to diminish these rights that I'm talking about today. However, I think it's very important to never take these rights for granted, because you and I, listening to this, depending on our age, we were born into having these rights. But these rights that we were born into were rights that other women had to fight for. And that is enough for me to take it seriously. It is enough for me to show my gratitude and to highlight them, even if they're not big issues in today's society, in today's climate. I do this because I do not like the negative pushback that is happening with feminism today. I don't like how it is being undervalued and undermined and scoffed at, because there is value in it. And it has given you and I so many rights, so many opportunities. And I am not going to dismiss a cause that worked out in my favor. I am not going to do that. So I'm going to show you, or I'm going to tell you, some of the rights that feminism fought for, that I utilize today, that I am grateful for today. And I'm going to start with the obvious, is the right to vote. The first thing many people bring up when they talk about the importance of feminism is the right to vote. And it is very important. Everyone, regardless of sex, should have a right to choose the candidate that best represents their values and beliefs. Politics, whether you realize it or not, affect you. They affect your daily life. They affect your perspective on said daily life. And they affect your perspective that you have on yourself and others. It shapes and influences the entire world that you live in. And you sure as hell should exercise that right. And do not undermine it. If you have the right to vote, utilize it. These women that fought for my right to vote worked hard so that I can have a say in who makes decisions for me. That is incredible. And I am so grateful. I am grateful to have a voice in my country's election process, in my country's politics. I am grateful that I can make an informed decision and then write in the ballot who I think is the best candidate to represent me. And that is because of feminism. Politics matter. They influence your life. And everybody in a country should have the right to choose the candidate that's best for them. Next, we're going to talk about no-fault divorce. What is no-fault divorce? Because I know this is not something that I knew until up until 2 years ago. I never even knew this was a thing. But no-fault divorce is a legal dissolution of marriage without needing to show proof of wrongdoing or citing blame. In other words, it means that you can leave your spouse without needing to prove why you need to leave them. So there's no need for evidence. This is not a crime scene investigation where you need to prove someone is guilty. You could just leave them without needing a proper cause. So a good example is if your spouse is cheating, you don't need to show evidence of adultery now. Because of no-fault divorce, there's no need to show evidence of cheating, of adultery. And you think about it, back in this day, how could you show evidence of adultery, right? There's no video cameras, there's no videotape, because this was signed in 1969 and took effect in 1970. So there's no way you could just, video record somebody cheating? How effective was that? How accessible was that back in 1969 and 1970? You shouldn't even need to show evidence of proof if you want to leave somebody. That should not be a thing. And if you think about it, that was not so long ago. Why is this important to feminism? Think about victims of abuse. They were allowed to leave safely without needing to prove their abuse in court. This no-fault divorce led to a 16% decrease in female suicide. This law allowing no-fault divorce, allowing there no need to show evidence or proof of abuse, wrongdoing, adultery, whatever, saved women's lives. It inadvertently saved women's lives, because before that, they would have to show proof and evidence. And if they didn't have a substantial amount of proof and evidence, or the right kind of proof and evidence, then their only freedom was death. So this saved lives because it, like I said before, I'm going to reiterate it, it decreased female suicide by 16%. It gave women another option for freedom besides death. And that's very important. I know we have issues with divorce today, but I will sit here. I'm a child of divorce, and I will gladly sit here and say that I am grateful for this law. People that don't want to be together, that shouldn't be together, should not be forced to stay together. Let's talk about bodily autonomy. It wasn't until the late 60s and early 70s that hospitals stopped asking for husbands' consent in their wives' surgeries. Imagine that. You need a surgery, but you can't just say, yes, I want this surgery. Your husband needs to consent. You need to put your whole trust in another person to make the best decision for you and your health. And even if you're begging for this surgery, it does not matter. Your husband needs to consent to it. A person that's not dealing with a health issue, a person that is not in need of the surgery, a person that is not feeling what you're feeling, gets to make the decision for your body. This was under the women's health movement, which pushed for personal autonomy and gave women the right to make decisions for their own bodies. I would be livid if I needed a life-changing surgery and my word and my consent was not enough. I had to ask for my husband's consent. That would make me livid. Women deserve the right, and they are more than capable to make independent decisions regarding their own body, health, and well-being. And it drives me nuts that for some reason women weren't even granted the right to make decisions about their own body up until the late 60s and 70s. And the last one was the right to our own finances. Women didn't have full financial freedom until 1974. Before that, every financial decision a woman made had to be authorized by her husband. It had to be signed by him. It was a requirement that a husband signed for any credit card or loans. Even her own assets were in her husband's control. Imagine not having full authority over your own finances and assets. Imagine not being able to have the option to have full control. That would piss me off. That would piss me off. And I know that that would piss a lot of other women off. Because feminism is not a liberal issue. And I hate that it's come to this idea that it's a liberal versus conservative issue. Because no matter our political party, these issues have affected us. These issues have freed us. These issues make us who we are today. There are a lot of opinionated, outspoken women on both sides that have their own money, that have their own autonomy, that benefit from these laws that other women fought for. And they fought for a reason, because the other reality was a lot darker, a lot more restricting. And I hate that we've come to a point where feminism is seen as this woke ideology, that feminism is something that is only reserved for liberals, when conservative women actively get to use the rights that women fought for in their favor. And it's okay. It's okay. If you want to be a conservative woman, I am not here to bash you. That is not my right. But I do encourage you to try to see feminism in a different light. I should say, I apologize. Try to see feminism in a different light. Try not to just see this as some woke, liberal, media BS. Appreciate that you're able to take these rights for granted and these freedoms for granted. Appreciate that you have a right to your own money, a right to education, a right to a job, a right to personal autonomy, bodily autonomy. Be grateful that you're a conservative woman that gets to vote for the candidate that you feel is best. Be grateful for that. And again, I'm not here to fearmonger. I do not think that any of these rights are being taken away anytime soon. But I do not want this political topic to be so undervalued anymore and so belittled and berated anymore. Because these are only a handful of rights that I mentioned. And it's the fact that my rights, a lot of my rights, are not God-given. They had to be written into laws and legislations in order for me to have them. And at the end of the day, I know we're in a divisive period right now, but I want to fight for all women. And I want all women to be protected and to be free, because that is what we deserve. And we as women know how capable we are. We know how capable we are at making our own decisions, of having our own opinions. We know how emotionally intelligent we can be, how intellectual we can be, how we are more than capable. And I just please understand the importance of feminism. And I'm going to leave that there.